So why don't you introduce yourself? We're going to go around the table. So Evan, you want to start first, and then Han will go.
Sure. Hi, my name is Ivan Small. I'm an assistant professor. Let me just put my earphones on.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
I can hear a lot of echo. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Ivan Small. I'm an assistant professor of anthropology and international studies at Central Connecticut State University. And I work on a number of mobility studies topics. I have a book coming out on migration and remittances between California and Vietnam. I spent about a year and a half in Vietnam doing research in Ho Chi Minh City and Quy Nhon primarily, and also in San Jose and Orange County in California. I've done research more recently on transportation consumption, looking at the emerging automobile market in Ho Chi Minh City and Da Nang. And I'm also editing a volume right now on mobile money practices, comparatively looking at cell phone technologies that allow people to remit money via cell phone and bypassing banks. And so that's a comparative project, but I'm also looking at how that technology may be introduced in Vietnam in the future.
Interesting. Okay, so we have another person online. Please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. Hi Kelly, can you hear me?
Oh yes,
Yes.
How are you? Please introduce yourself to the
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon from Portugal. My name is Hang Dao and actually I'm from Hanoi, Vietnam, but I'm living in Portugal right now. I just got my PhD on sustainable energy system, and I'm doing some part-time teaching assistant at the University of Lisbon. So my work has been, my research has been focused on environmental issues, sustainable energy, renewable energy system, from technology development to science and engineering system. So basically, for now I'm open for collaboration and work with broader issues of development issues of Vietnam. But my main focus has been on environmental issues, energy, renewable energy, and that's what I'm looking for. And also, I'm open for discussion and other broader issues.
Great.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Very happy to be your.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go.
I have to say something. It's better for me to turn off the camera, so the internet is more stable for me from
Okay.
this side.
Okay. Do what you need to do. Okay. So.
She's
Okay.
still in Hanoi right now. But
She's in Portugal. But she's a
yeah.
Yeah.
And she was saying a little
Right.
bit.
I did my bachelor from Hanoi University of Technology. Đại khoa Hà Nội.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Are you still in Hanoi right now?
Yeah.
No.
No. I'm in Lisbon, Portugal.
Oh, okay.
So, but I did my bachelor. I did my bachelor in Hanoi.
Yeah.
Hanoi University of Technology, and then I did my master in Singapore and in Stanford, and then I did my PhD in Lisbon, Portugal, and in Finland. So basically, it's just.
And then
But now
you
I'm
met
in
Han
Portugal.
when you were in Hanoi. Yeah. Han, do you remember Andrew? Andrew's here. He was.
I recognized.
Yeah.
I recognized your face, but I couldn't remember your name. Yeah. You mentioned you were writing a book on startup, right?
Right.
Yes, that's correct. I'm currently writing a
Nice to
book.
see you again.
Sure, nice to see you too.
So, has been very active in the diaspora community, and this is another part of the hidden history, that the diaspora community in the arts and sciences have been very active with a lot of national students from Vietnam, actually in collaboration with overseas Vietnamese. So we've had partnerships for over 20 years, really since since Paul Saigon or reunification, and Han is an example of this, and just very active. And she also set up the Du Học Sinh meeting in Hanoi, and there were 2 Du Học Sinh one from Berkeley and one from Davis that set up one in Saigon, and they actually have an association in Saigon, and in Hanoi it's more ad hoc. In the Hanoi one, the sort of environment or it was a lot of returnees with PhDs and working in Vietnam and looking for projects that they are really trained to do, and they were really eager to help Vietnam, but there was a lot of, as we talked about, infrastructure issues or institutional issues and then or personal adaptation coming back issues. So, but so thank you. Just wanted to give more background of your work. So let's move around. Should we start with Ashish?
Sure. So I'm Ashish Shenoy. I'm an assistant professor at UC Davis in agricultural and resource economics, and most of my work focuses on labor markets and migration. So I have a project in Thailand looking at sort of how migration affected the long-term development of Thailand over the 1980s and 90s. And I'm starting a project now in Bangladesh working with seasonal agricultural workers and sort of subsidizing their migration to cities during the lean season when there's little work. So right now I don't have anything particular going on in Vietnam, but I'm interested to sort of learn about the country and their opportunities for research.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Hoi from University of Da Nang as a professor and also a founder of Fed Lab Da Nang, working on multiple things, but around how to bring innovation into the university system and also to serve for children and the stroke patients in Vietnam. And nice to meet you.
Great. My name is Andrew Rowan. I'm director of GKTA Group, which is based in Hanoi, Vietnam. I work with the public sector, including the Finland-Vietnam Innovation Partnership Program, the U.S. Embassy, and also the Ministry of Science and Technology on innovation initiatives. This includes building capacity for entrepreneurs. I'm also working on a book called Startup Vietnam, Innovation and Entrepreneurship in the Socialist Republic, which looks specifically at innovation, startups, and entrepreneurship in Vietnam.
Thank you. I'm Q-Ling Carolyn Valverde, and associate professor. I'll never get used to that. So, associate professor in Asian American Studies at UC Davis. My research previously have focused on the Vietnamese and Vietnamese diaspora connections through economics, politics, and culture. And my work moving forward is on general development of Vietnam, but particularly nation branding. And and also far into the future, my work will be around spirit realm and bringing it to the academy. And currently, I run the New Vietnam Studies Initiative, which I'll talk about more extensively. But in short, it's bringing together scholars in the U.S. and internationally, and particularly in Vietnam, to work on collaborative projects around the development of Vietnam.
My name is Leslie Doe, Professor Valverde's head research assistant, and I'm an undergraduate student, and I'm graduating this quarter.
And you'll be working
in Vietnam for 2 years at a startup.
Wow.
So she was in
That's
Vietnam last year, and as an intern, she was so phenomenal, they started paying her, and then they started saying, hey, maybe you should just put your MBA on hold when you graduate and come work. So she's gonna work in Vietnam for a couple of years and then go for her MBA.
That's great. Congratulations.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
where are you working?
Oh, sorry, what's the question?
Where will you be working?
Oh, in Ho Chi Minh City.
So Glass Egg and Bloomer.
Yes.
Oh, great.
So startups. Well, actually, Glass Egg is a digital media
company outsourcing the resources to Bloom.
Yeah. So they do a lot of the videos for games and movies. I'm not sorry. Actually, I don't know. Some video games.
As a growing industry.
They're one of the few VietQ owned companies in Vietnam, though I think they are also incorporated elsewhere, like Hong Kong or something like that. But anyway, they've been there for over 20 years. VietQ from California is the CEO there. One of the handful of really successful VietQ doing various businesses, and he's continues to be an entrepreneur. So this is one. So he started a startup on social media around fame and how to get fame, essentially, right? And that's the project that Leslie will be working on. Sorry to speak for Leslie, but she's very humble. Okay. Yes, yes.
Well, I'm Vance Fong. I was born in Hanoi. Have been in the U.S. for a large number of years. I'm currently am a senior advisor at the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and I wear many hats. And really busy implementing a lot of different programs, but anytime people mention Vietnam, that's in the middle of my heart. I enjoy coming back to Vietnam since 2000, setting up the collaborations on cleaning up, as well as Agent Orange dioxin, as well as helping the victims. So both on the environmental side, the technology, the cleanup, the characterization, the studies, but also looking at communities that were impacted by the chemical. And we found out after 12 years of working there that the focus is only on a small fraction of the total damage, which is hotspots cleanup. So I mentioned to Dr. Hoy earlier that I was in Da Nang airport, now being expanding very quickly. But I was there doing a study on bioremediations of dioxin. Nobody had done that internationally because dioxin is such a difficult chemical to decompose. So I recently, sort of after doing the bulk of setting up for remediation and they're on the right track, I'm turning my attention to the ecosystem that was damaged heavily by the spraying of herbicides, and find out quite quickly that the government is not funding all of that at all. So I took it on myself. I have many friends in Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi that are either official at the level of really decision making or the heads of a lot of companies who are very fervent, very passionate at making investment and working with U.S. companies. And I've introduced to them many companies that are doing a lot of work, food, equipment, whatever, construction. But the passion in me still is trying to look for ways to restore the ecosystem that was impacted. And Dr. Hoy from Da Nang, you probably know that there are still thousands upon thousands of hectares of land that are not growing anything, and that people, the community that live by there, are very wouldn't have jobs, and they're very, very poor. So I and my friend, who is a professor at Fresno University, he had sort of discovered a very particular tree that would grow very, very fast, and that would not harm the environment of Vietnam, and that it would contribute a lot of lumber to Vietnam in its development, but also because of the 3,000 hectares we're going to be planting the trees on, that it would have a lot of economic assistance to the people living near there. They all would have jobs. And also we would be entitled to getting the United Nations carbon credit, which is, we're making Vietnam more green, and it's helping the world, developed countries to absorb a lot of CO2. So from an agricultural standpoint, we're definitely contributing that way. And I've been working with Professor here to look for ways to connect what she's doing with that project. Because once that pilot project is going to be successful, we're looking to do more. So there are places at the North Vietnam, in that certain area, there are area in the south of Vietnam, but there are also area in the middle of Vietnam that we look forward to collaborate with you on and telling you more about the species. So without telling you anything else about my life in the EPA, I just tell you a little part of it which has to do with Vietnam. And I just love thinking about Vietnam, what we can do for Vietnam, maybe one day we wake up. So Vietnam is a really nice country. It have all the potential to be a really nice and clean, environmentally clean country, and not invested in, genetically modified type, products and things like that. And it would be a great place to go visit. I always remember Da Nang. They have this resort that's wonderful to stay in. Where this little big Buddha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super big.
It's super big and super nice when you check in at the hotel. It feels almost like if you were standing in heaven. Because the check-in desk was like at a point where you can oversee the entire Da Nang, and they have colorful leather sofas all around there. And
Oh my God.
you go in there
Mr.
and you
Vance is
just don't
fancy.
want to leave, and there's a French chef cooking.
Whoa, okay.
So I
We're
look
having
forward
a-
to
yeah.
connect with this group again, maybe over there.
Well, we are planning an international conference, aren't we, Mr. Hoy, in Da Nang?
Yes.
So let's keep that place in mind.
Professor Keelan is planning to host an international event in Da Nang in
Okay.
April, so we are now working on it.
Yeah.
And recently, as I reported to Keelan, I on the lead for the USAID environmental project,
Yes.
focusing on Formosa.
Yes.
So we got a grant of around 2 million for 5 years, so a
Perfect.
small grant for 5 years, and working together with university partners and someone like you, like you. So focusing on water, which were harmful by the Formosa factory.
Yes.
How
Yes.
can we deal with it? See
Mhm.
the impact, see the effects out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, then I can bring other part of my life on wastewater treatment into the system helping with you. Because I have many friends in the US government as well as in the industry who are really good at doing wastewater treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Senja, the project on Senja, people had, sort of consulted me on that.
Wow.
I'll tell you a little bit more about that.
So you have a lot in the name already.
Yeah, I love Da Nang.
We are very Da Nang centric here. All of a sudden. Forget how Germany and Saigon. So, Marissa, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Marissa G, and I am one of Professor Valverde's students in her Spirits Realm class. Here for support, mainly.
So yeah, I've already started teaching a course on spirit realm. So we're moving forward on that slowly but surely. So I think that's gonna be a challenge there. Well, thank you again for being here. I already see the dynamism that is starting to play out, and we'll have more faculty come through, and also students like Marissa through the day to have exposure to what we're trying to build at Davis, and trying to create sort of venues for collaboration. So on that, I want to talk a little bit about why we are actually here. So this is the New Viet Nam Studies Initiative cluster meetings, and this is the third of the year. So this is the last one. And we were given a grant by the Davis Humanities Institute with the sole purpose of bringing together scholars for the topic of Vietnam's development. So on a sort of shoestring budget, we're able to invite some individuals from New York and Hanoi and Da Nang, and also really call on the expertise we have in the Bay Area and on campus, and also online in other parts of the world and in the United States to join us. So there'll be sort of sprinkles of that throughout the day, so just to give you a heads up. So I want to quickly talk about the New Vietnam Studies Initiative and its connection to particular Davis. We have a long relationship with Vietnam in terms of collaborative operations and memorandums of understanding with various universities. One in particular is just that this is the latest incarnation of our and result of our collaborative work, which is with Nam University in Ho Chi Minh City. And so the Chancellor Hexter was there along with the President of Nam Lam, and we had a 2-day conference where we had a delegation of about a dozen scholars from UC Davis, including the Executive Chancellor of Global Affairs, and as I mentioned, the top university administrator leadership, Ralph Hexter, but also deans of agriculture. The Dean of Agriculture was also there, and top scholars have been working in Vietnam for as I mentioned, over 2 decades now, like Jim Hill and others. And he's also the Dean of International Affairs, and I believe he stepped down. But anyway, long and short of it is one of the interesting things that was brought up at this conference was that we are trying to bring together a lot of research around STEM and social science and humanities. So a lot of people, we're bringing together STEM and social science and humanities. So a lot of projects, even at Nom Lam, they're looking to expand and even bring in social science into their university, because they see, as in most trends now in the supposed hard science, but also what we know all too well in the science and humanities is the, or at least, you know, I and people I work with, the importance of, you know, the sort of the hard science side of the university and trying to bring them together. So this is an example of that, and on this trip, you know, there were various ways in which we made connections, and yesterday we had Catherine Burnett, who is the director of the only tea institute in the world, and so her research, her background is in Chinese arts, but now she's working on, for example, teapots in Vietnam, and her institute has gotten a lot of support and interest from the agricultural school, and we are, you know, the #1 agricultural school in the world, and also top 5 in environmental sciences, and also veterinary medicine. So basically, you know, one very obvious reason why we continue to have a relationship with Vietnam and have had a relationship with Vietnam for over 2 decades is because of the particularities of what our focuses are at UC Davis that is of interest to a predominantly rural agricultural nation that now is in the process of developing. And so to keep up with also those trends, now we bring in the various other parts of our university, such as, you know, economics, political science, psychiatry, veterinary medicine, as well as a lab. Do you remember the lab that they had where they, we have a lab actually on campus where anyone around the world can bring samples.
It's a super fun lab.
It's a super fun lab.
Wow.
Well, that sounds funny, but I mean, like, it's fun, but it's also fun, right? And so anywhere around the world, and of course this will be interest to Vietnam, you can bring in land, soil and plants and etc. And they have the funding to analyze that, and then help you write reports and see and basically analyze your samples. So
we cannot bring soil and oils and process in the water.
well, I think in those instances you'd have to contact the lab and arrange for those things. I was just saying, Vance, that we have a lab on campus that its purpose is to analyze soil, etc., from anywhere around the world in order to help them write reports and things like that. Yeah, so that was a part of that conversation was some of our first cluster meetings that we had. So, you know, so here again is we have you know, various MOUs with universities in Vietnam, some more recently, and some actually it was not signed in 2016. I'm sorry, that was like it was signed like 2000 or something like that. So that's a mistypo for me. Or I think it was re-signed in 2016, but the initial one was 10 years ago. So actually the conference was a 10-year anniversary of the signing of the MOU. And then of course we have the University of Science, and computer science is also doing work with Vietnam. And then more recently the Vietnam National University of Ho Chi Minh, in particular in social science and humanities, because that is a push that we all trying to have to, you know, as like with your work and advances, you know, there's the science element of it, but there's the people element of it, right? And we're trying to bring that together. And so we have study abroad programs, and as we talked about, we can definitely have more to advance that. We also have fellows in various years. This has not been updated, but it is to say that we have ongoing scholars here. We graduate many PhDs, and in particular the agricultural school, but in other STEM-related graduate programs as well. And so we are on the radar of Vietnam in terms of it being a major university, for sure. I know this in my meetings with ministers, etc. And then, of course, we have scholars in various areas. We've done a variety of collaborative work we have faculty on here, and this is actually a growing number of faculty that, are just maybe not aware to put their name on the database working on Vietnam, but we are now in the, several dozens of scholars working on Vietnam, which is really rare, because for example, in a place like Berkeley, and when I talk to them about, an institute like this, or a center, or initiative, they don't have, but they have just but one person working on Vietnam, and then everyone else more marginally. Whereas on this campus, we have these kinds of numbers of people who are either have worked previously on projects, currently on projects, or have interest in the future. And these particular ones have spent many years in Vietnam, actually working on the ground, training, being in the universities, or working on various projects around wherever their disciplines may be. So you see that, and many of these were in our previous meetings as well. And of course, we've done the research and written, co-authored with those in Vietnam, which is another very important component of the initiative, which is, and it's evolving too, because I think originally a lot of these projects were around what can we do to help Vietnam. So then a part of our mission in the university, of course, is service, right? So supposedly, what can we do to help Vietnam in these areas, etc. And Vietnam at that point was still considered a poor country versus now middle poor, right? And I'm sorry, is that the term? Lower middle income. Yes. And so the point is, now that's shifted, where the partnerships are having a lot more, are either making a priority to fund these kind of research programs and also to create collaborations, or because the economy is rising very quickly, they have the means to bring over scholars, to receive scholars, to host events and conferences, etc. So now, and also to train our people. Like, that's going to be, I think, the trend towards the future. The expertise coming from Vietnam will be tremendous in what we can learn about Vietnam versus this idea of like one way, right? So now it's much more of a two-way, and we want to promote that, because one of the trends, and we have Mr. Ho to represent that, is a lot of individuals have received overseas education at the PhD level, and so and because of their native experience in Vietnam, being on the ground, plus the Western training, they become invaluable as scholars and colleagues in projects. So we definitely recognize that and want to continue to create opportunities where they can exist. So as you know, with a population of 94 million and a literacy rate of 92%, Vietnam is the fastest growing nation in Southeast Asia, and has recently moved from the ranking of international poor to middle poor, with the goal of becoming middle income nation in the next 10 to 20 years. It's signing of the controversial Trans-Pacific Partnership in summer 2015, and its eventual demise and visit by the U.S. President Obama in summer of 2016 begs the question of how much global trade agreements and warming of relations with superpowers will strengthen its economy while maintaining its sovereignty. And I think that is yet another theme that goes on, like how will Vietnam pivot itself as this new developing nation in relation to these other countries, and how will they sort of keep from making mistakes that other developing countries have made in terms of recognizing their own resources and their own power base, versus succumbing to sort of international agreements and international funding agencies and so on and so forth. So I think this is one of the questions that definitely our sort of network can pick up, and I think is a crucial one. Additionally, with environmental concerns looming, most notably the dramatic climate changes and Formosa plant chemical spill in spring of 2016, and of course all these numbers are very recent, right, 2016, and the devastating loss of marine life as a result, issues of health protection, sustainable growth have reached an important juncture. These and many other pertinent research questions will have practical consequences for Vietnam and its widening global reach. American knowledge production in Vietnam, however, has not been sufficient enough to answer inquiries about current issues affecting Vietnam, because writings in English language have focused mostly exclusively on the geopolitical and military history of Vietnam War and its consequences for Americans. There's an increase of scholars engaging in research on contemporary Vietnam, but they are scattered across the U.S. globe. So I think for us, because of our work in contemporary Vietnam, we we do know, but we really don't maybe recognize on a daily basis that the huge sort of still impression of Vietnam as being based in the Vietnam War. And I think you mentioned it, but if you just sit back and look at the literature, as you know, I think Andrew mentioned it yesterday, it's predominantly about the 20th century, which is insane because we're now well into the 21st century. And so really this initiative is looking to rectify that, and even my own personal work is looking to rethink and redefine what Vietnam is for global image making, etc. So the New Vietnam Studies Initiative UC Davis promotes research in the sciences and social science and contemporary Vietnam, domestically and internationally, with focus on economic and political development in addition to arts and culture. It would bring together scholars from around the world for collaborative research, symposia, conferences, forums, performances, curricula, and publications. So academic programming and activities that look at the reformation of Vietnam's cultural political identity as it moves towards having a greater role in the economically in the world would draw tremendous interest, and so we situate particularly our university as the center for this kind of research, which is the main focus there. So how we do this is, as I mentioned, we're bringing together science and social science with humanities, and considering Vietnam in terms of the contemporary Vietnam in terms of sustainability and sovereignty. Like these will be the two main themes that will drive this initiative, because I think sometimes in discussions about development and quick development, these two issues are less of a focus, where with colleagues and myself, we feel it should be the central focus. And of course, we want to cultivate the next generation of scholars in Vietnam studies, which is another reason why I include students in the organizing of these events. I'll talk more a little bit about how to include undergrads, and also I invite undergrad students to come and observe in a way that I think in most of these meetings, students are not a part of that conversation, or not invited to participate in the same way. And actually yesterday we had presentations from two undergrads who were talking about the Vietnam's language movement at Davis, and we had them centrally featured because this is important for Vietnam studies, and I believe in sort of empowering the young students with the tools in which they could engage in what they view is important. And they're extremely professional, they're extremely good at organizing, they have a lot of passion and a lot of energy. Leslie, who most of you have been in contact with, is a prime example of that. And I'm sad to see her go, but anyway. In the issues of, even though, we talk about moving forward, we recognize, especially when there's a lot of these individuals, even though this is called the Vietnam War and its Legacy Speaker Series, and we have them annually, many of these people talk about the legacies of the war, but then what is its effects now? So we have a doctor that talks about traumas to the refugee community and how it's affecting the communities now. We have artists that were very instrumental in the Vietnam War, but talking about how this is universal and universal, not just anti-war. We have, for example, Paul Cox, who's a veteran, but now is a part of Vietnam Vets organization, where basically they work on cleanup, but also lobbying the U.S. to recognize the harms, the health issues that affect not only the Vietnamese and the American vets, but the overseas Vietnamese that came over, post 75. And I can, go on and on. We even have individuals who want to speak on democracy in Vietnam, which is pretty controversial. But point being, this is sponsored by the initiative, and we have speakers that come through. We've also have the recognition of being the first major university in the United States that was visited by such a high-level diplomat from Vietnam, Phạm Quang Vinh, and he came through in 2016, just in the heels of signing the TTP in the now ill-fated TTP in Washington, D.C., and he came to a standing room only with faculty, deans, and students that grilled him for an hour and a half. And of course, because TPP was controversial, is controversial, so students here are very equipped to ask him the hard questions, and he gave some really good answers, but he did say to me afterwards, man, your students are tough, you know? And I'm really proud of that, but I'm also proud that we have, and this is, this is, you know, between us in the room, but what was nice about his visit too is that Sacramento community leadership also then got news of it, because we're very transparent in the initiative and what we do here, and so we of course advertise his visit. And as many of you know, there's the anti-communist elements in the Vietnamese American community here, but they then asked a meeting with him. And so at UC Davis, with the initiative, we facilitated these high-level meetings between leaderships in the diaspora and leaderships in Vietnam. And so I'm proud that the initiative and here at Davis, we're able to facilitate those kind of conversations. And it comes about because of our transparency in what we do. And so, as was discussed yesterday, you may not like what we do, but you know exactly what we do. So there is no, you know, sort of like, well, you're this and you're that. It's like, well, yes, we invite everyone to the table, you know? So we also, I should maybe, oh, darn it, I don't have the Arvin. On that, we don't have the flyer up here for some reason, but we also hosted the last year we hosted a symposium on South Vietnam Arvin history, because as you may know, a lot of the history on South Vietnam was written in a very one-sided manner, which I think leaves South Vietnam in a disparaging sort of light, especially in the U.S. And so there now is a variety of memoirs and research out from Vietnamese and non-Vietnamese alike from all over the world, revisiting the history of South Vietnam. And so this has been a huge new avenue for historians, because, you know, everyone looks at, say, civil rights or you know, World War II, you know, like big historical moments, but very few, almost next to zero, look at South Vietnam history, which is really rich in data, really rich in archival materials, but not rich in research. And so that is a wide open field that young historians around the world are just like that rushing to. So we recognize that, and we recognize, so we brought a scholar in from Australia, who just finished her work and her oral history on Arvin. We had an Arvin officer who wrote a beautiful memoir that's being used in universities around the United States. He unfortunately recently passed, but that was the urgency in having the symposium and conferences like this, because these men and women are dying off. And then we had young scholars looking at this historical moment, as well as writers and so on and forth. So we have on the one hand Phạm Công Vinh, and then we have on the other hand Arvin, you know, so we try to definitely just promote whatever is current and whatever is necessary, and damn to the politics of it, because this is a research institution. We also promote the art, so we had a winning poet, tango, amazing tango dancer, so she played a guitar, read her poetry, sang, and also danced a fabulous tango for us, and she's internationally renowned poet and tango dancer. This is yet one of my proudest moments, and this is where Vance was involved. And this is it was the screening of Cho Beyond the Lines, which is about a just a dynamic individual who is born with Agent Orange characteristics, of course, so he didn't have certain limbs or limited movement. And there was a documentary made on him, and he's now quite famous in Vietnam. But he overcame his disability to become a really well-known artist, so he actually makes a living as an artist in Vietnam. So we had, and it was Academy nominated, so we had the director, we screened the film, and we also had Vance from the EPA, and we had researchers here that were doing cleanup and looking at communities and how they were affected by continued Agent Orange situation. And so it was a packed room, and it was 50% from STEM, 50% from social science and humanities. So there was, this is for me a really great example of how STEM and social science have worked well together. And so this is here, we have social science, humanities, the arts, and STEM coming together to look at this issue. the last symposium we had, you can't see much of this, but it was the Vietnamese language symposium, where we had scholars from Stanford, from Fullerton, and also a principal from a Saturday Vietnamese language school here in the United States, as well as individuals who are creating apps around language, come to speak about the importance of Vietnamese language in the university and retention of language for a variety of reasons. So we promoted that. So that was just to give you examples of what the initiative have accomplished in the last 2 years, 2.5 years. And so really the specific goals when we started was to offer, and continues now, is to offer Vietnamese language courses, expand the curriculum, and of course new Viet Nam Studies group with courses for faculty related to major. So generate publication research, establish and expose broader global audience to current scholarship. So in the area of generate publication, and this is again a goal of ours, we want to create an online journal, possibly bilingual if funding permits, but it is going to be run and edited by undergraduate and graduate students. That is, they decide on the theme. Of course, they'll be supervised and have advisees, faculty advisees and industry advisees, etc. But they themselves will decide on the themes and decide on the articles that are picked, and then edit the articles themselves. So this is really to set forth really new scholarship. You know, like we think we're the movers and shakers, but actually we're pretty old. And so, you know, not you, Ashish, you're still young. But point being, and you, Andrew, you're still a baby. So the idea.
Me too.
Okay. All right. Okay. You know what? We're all babies. Gosh, these old people. But anyway, so point being, I'm committed, and because I personally have worked with phenomenal undergraduate and graduate students, I know what they're capable of. And so I think the leadership in this way should be in their hands, and that my role is to really bring people together and you know, work on my scholarship, but really provide as many you know, opportunities for young people as possible. That's one way to do it. And of course, provide a physical space in the form of center to facilitate projects. You know, we had this meeting, but it's, you see, yesterday was over there, today is over here, you know. So it's a space issue, and it's also difficult when we receive individuals, like, you know, where do we go, etc. So it's not a major priority, but we really do envision a center of some sort in the future. Believe it or not, these three were in our goals, but we actually achieved in the 2 years. So we've started a virtual space to for research collaboration exchange in regards to Vietnam development, and this is in the process. So we're working with a social science research institute in Vietnam, which is a ministry level, to create a virtual sort of you know, institute or center that would be a database of everyone here and everyone like us around the world, so that, you know, when we have research or interest, or when you're needing, you know, individuals for your anthology, you can definitely look on here, or people you can work with. And so that's, you know, as a scholar, you know, we one of the things that, you know, I struggled with, especially when I was an assistant professor, but even as a, you know, associate professor, is there has to be other people working on these topics that I can talk to, but, you know, I felt so isolated. And so the networks that I made have been made over 20 plus years, you know, and I feel like this should be shared, and it should be shared with others who have these kind of networks. And then so we can bring in scholars, young and veteran scholars, together to be really active in these kind of projects. Otherwise, we sort of do it in isolation and individually, right? Whereas with our combined, you know, gray matter, if you will, we can do so much more. So that is the sort of the background of wanting to create that, you know, virtual space. And organize events that engage multiple disciplines and most pertinent issues regarding contemporary Vietnam. So how our symposiums work is we just ask, like we do focus groups, or we ask around, we said, what is the most pertinent issues and like in the case of the students, they came to me and they said, we insist on you having a Vietnamese language symposium because we really feel strongly about this and we'll help you organize it. And I said, fine. So we have set budget every quarter to create a symposium, and that's, so whatever comes up, that's what we do. So this quarter, we're not doing a symposium because we have 3 cluster meetings, which are smaller, more focused, more brainstorming versions of these symposiums, if you will, where we'll probably start thinking of and suggesting future symposiums, let's say. And I already have many I think of, one of which is startups, like I really want to do that one, or humanitarian projects in Vietnam, or those kinds of things that I'm thinking of more immediately moving towards the future. And of course, host international symposium events, facilitate scholarly inquiries, provide networks and scholars connect transnationally, and facilitate mentorship opportunities for students. So all this is in the process. As mentioned, the symposiums there. Professor Hoy and I are now in talks to have sort of the first international conference in Da Nang next year in the spring, and then we'll probably move it to Saigon the following year, and then back to Davis the 3rd year. So it'll be a rotation. We might be able to do this annually, but it'll be a rotation with different areas where we are establishing collaborative projects. So that is again a way to bring this scholarship to various parts of the world, and with focus again on Davis and Vietnam initially, right?
Okay.
So,
if I may, just like to stay in touch with the whole planning of the international
Absolutely.
symposium in Da Nang. I have many friends in Da Nang who are corporate heads, and they were born in Da Nang, so they're very, very passionate about environmental efforts there. So,
thank you so much, Matt.
so yeah,
with that,
just kinda keep me on the list.
Yeah, with that I will also say everyone at this meeting and have been coming to these meetings will also be a part of a continued conversation, so that we don't let the momentum sort of end here. And of course, unfortunately those online won't be able to join our dinner today, but I think that's where all the magic's gonna happen. But of course we'll keep you in order, and also keep you abreast with what's going on, and yes, so here are the goals that we can still achieve together in this group. So Vance, you're leading up to this very important issue actually, and here and elsewhere, including partners in Vietnam, partners internationally, and partners here in Davis, and more locally in California. More, I don't know what symposiums are, but I'm thinking it's a symposium. I made a new word. Conferences, as mentioned, create venues for collaborative projects. So definitely working on grants and research. So what I've noticed, and maybe you can help me brainstorm, is much more difficult to get funding for institutes, and much easier to get funding, though not easy, but easier for collaborative projects. So I think what the center really less focused on sort of the brick and mortar, but more focused on sort of like generating collaborative projects, which is where I see it going, where it could be of best use. And promote Vietnam studies for the next generation, and really mentoring students and giving them research opportunities. And what I mean by this is that this group here work with students directly. As like someone like Henry, who is born in the U.S. From very modest means. We learned that we came from the same very we came from the same high school. When I went, it was a very impoverished inner city high school, but apparently it's a very shishi high school now. So if I say I come from this high school, it actually has some cachet. But in any case, he is this young man who really worked on keeping the language, and as he said yesterday, and he's not unique. But our community is diverse, so he represents some in our community where his interest is purely in Vietnam, not so much in the diaspora or the community here, but what he can do for Vietnam. And so he's doing environmental studies at Berkeley, and he's from Da Nang, and he's visited Da Nang and stayed in Da Nang for several months each year in order to, and so it's no surprise that someone coming up from Da Nang will see that there are environmental dangers in the area, and there needs to be something done about that beautiful city. And so We want to, of course, help and bring in, I think, is another thing. I don't know the mindset of those in the group, but I personally do not feel there is a hierarchy between undergraduate, graduate, postgrad, and faculty, and those in the industry in terms of working together. Because I think all these groups have very valuable skills that can only strengthen any collaborative project. So I think if we widen our understanding of the usefulness of students, I think that would advance and help us in thinking more long term and with vision that what could happen to Vietnam studies. New Vietnam studies, and so we feel very strongly about that. So that's why we let a lot of our projects and programs be led by students. I should say Leslie almost single-handedly, organized the Agent Orange Joe Beyond the Line Symposium that I'm most proud of, and so that's from an undergrad student that brought together all these scholars and individuals, and you worked with her at that point, I believe, right? So, so this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about, and so. Of course, I mentioned in the beginning that, here we are trying to create opportunities, trying to create collective projects. What we try to do is supported by my university. We work on a shoestring budget. I would love $1 million endowment, for example, to do all the work we want to do. And there are those like Hang and others who are in diaspora globally and in Vietnam that are hungry for projects. They're hungry to work with us. They need the types of funding that I think we can generate easier than they can in a place like, in Vietnam and as recent graduates, Not everyone can be Hoi from University of Da Nang, with all his affiliations, but Mr. Hoi is generous. And how we can, grow Vietnam, New Vietnam Studies. And new really is contemporary because Vietnam Studies really is associated with the war. So just to differentiate ourselves from, the 20th century and previous, it's new, right? So even though for us it's just Vietnam. And then, and just how do we grow in these endeavors? So I'll end it there, and if there's any, and also, I'm sorry, yesterday we had the amazing Andrew Rowan speak. This is you, right? I found you on the net, so okay. Hopefully it's not your doppelganger or something like that. But yeah, right, good. And then so of course we had Andrew speak. Came all the way from Hanoi and NYC for us, and speaking on, of course, the nuances of conducting business in a changing economy in Vietnam. And then today we have also the handsome Professor Hoi in his college days in I don't know where. Indeed, so this is a DC, yeah. See, happy times. They always put their happy time pictures in their LinkedIn, right? Why not? And of course, from the University of Da Nang. And this sort of leads to your talk, but I'll leave some time for questions and thoughts about what I presented so far.
Yeah, I just like to share a thought. I think you guys probably done this already, and you mentioned the dimensions of the history and the new development and the startup. So it's a range of time, and there's a range of people of different background. You got Arvin, you got Dr. Hoi, and then you talk about ages. You got students, undergrad, grad, professors, researcher, and you have a spectrum. It's almost like a continuum of social fabrics. You could be working in Vietnam, you could be here experiencing different cultural aspects and be impacted by different things. So it seems to me that you've got sufficient information to begin a model.
And different disciplines.
There's many more, of course. There's different products. It could be somebody's working on a book, somebody's working on
art project.
Yeah. So all that spectrums and varieties, and they sort of all connected together on the subject of Vietnam. And then even then, the subject of Vietnam is connected with many subjects right here in the United States,
Correct.
as well as internationally.
Mhm.
So you've got all these, and then sometimes you do symposiums, sometimes you do focus group discussion.
Mhm.
So it's all those dimensions. If you can put it together in some way like a model, it could be a very preliminary model
Mhm.
that people can look at,
Okay.
can actually comment on and see connection between things. It could be an electronic model,
Okay.
doesn't have to be physical. And then over time, that model is perfected
Okay.
because there are clear line connection between this piece
Okay.
and this piece.
Okay.
And the connection could very well mean, signing a new memorandum of understanding between
Mhm.
university, or the connection could very well be that somebody is given $1 million grant to do certain kind of study,
Mhm.
So when those connections are completed, you have these real line connecting items within that. It's just sort of like tickling the thinking of people about what the potential
Right.
of all that understanding, all that collaborations, and it won't be bit and pieces that come and then lose over time. It's a
Yeah.
continuum
Yeah.
of things, and that many people all around the world, more in Da Nang, I will join that group in no time, that would find themselves in
Right.
that model.
Oh, absolutely.
And they will find the connection that they need to continually enriching or contributing. Just the thought about organizing all that information. It could be agricultural,
Mhm.
industry,
Mhm.
wastewater,
Mhm.
anything.
It's
But-
amazing how it's all connected when we
Yeah.
have these conversations, isn't it? And we're just like, oh my God, we're your business. I'm in, Asian Americans, but tons of work we can do together.
Sure.
And so, it is truly phenomenal. And I know, Professor Small over there is going, yeah, for sure. I mean, these are. I didn't know you were working in Da Nang, for example. With the transportation.
Just in this short time, hearing all of you, it's amazing the connection. Sorry, I'm hearing a lot of feedback.
We hear you fine.
Just
We hear you fine.
Hearing all the connections that I wasn't even aware of. I mean, Hui working in Da Nang, and Hang working on infrastructure, Andrew technology, Keelan working on diaspora engagement, and Vance, you're working on Agent Orange. I'm actually on the board of the Rural Legacies Project, and so we've been doing a lot of work in Da Nang and Laos, Vietnam and Laos on Agent Orange issues, and we actually brought in Chow for a documentary screening.
Oh, okay. So you're familiar,
So we
yeah.
actually brought Chow in as well as the filmmaker, and that
Chow
brought a lot of
himself?
attention to the
Yeah,
issue of
he's traveling a lot.
Wow.
Promoting that particular film in various forums. We're doing something in Washington this summer. So, I think we're all in these kinds of specialized spaces, and sometimes we have forums to be able to connect and share information, such as the Vietnam Studies group. I'm sure many of you are kind of on that.
Yeah, yeah.
But making the connections, in person, or at least seeing, who you are and your faces, I think that helps a lot in terms of going forward with collaborations in the future. And I think all of us are bringing different things to the table: the funding, the kind of connections in the field, the institutional support. I mean, these are all things that we need to be able to do research, and none of us can do this on our own. So
Right,
I think
right.
it's great to start those collaborations, and I think going forward, being able to continue some of these conversations in person and in various nodes where this research is taking place and where the interest is, will be fantastic.
Well, I don't know if you noticed yet, but I'm like secretly, sort of vetting, sort of a steering board committee, where individuals would then help assist the growth of this initiative, right? And so, I see many in this table being able to help brainstorm in those areas. So, like Vance, you already have that mind, of like, okay, this is where we are. Let's make the, so.
Yeah, I mean,
that'd
it's
be
just
perfect.
something that you just mentioned earlier about laboratory analysis or laboratory capability on different things. It could be stem cell. It could be on how to separate stem cell from blood, or it could be on the wastewater thing. But you mentioned earlier about a space.
The fun lab, right? And they work on different
Yeah,
a lot.
the sort of like a virtual space connection. I think if you facilitate it just right, that model that I was talking about earlier could be having many users. So a user could be, oh, I'm setting up a business for wastewater analysis in Vietnam because recently Formosa, whatever reason,
Right.
lots of fish dying, and the government isn't taking enough samples, and when they took the sample, they didn't analyze them because there's lack of capability. I just recently get the call from NOAA and say they want to do something about it, right? So with the space, you know, you could be using many different softwares, and then one person as a part of that community within that model go up there and leave a message in this forum and
Right.
say,
That's a good idea.
I'm looking at this issue and I would like advice on this topic. And then other people jump in.
Right.
So I'm just saying that, you know, as we build these many resources, if you and with the IT development and everything, if we
Right.
connect it
Right.
well,
Right.
it's going to be revolving over time. But
Right.
I mean, it increases the use of it. I think it will be something that the students probably will be very passionate about building it.
Yeah.
Beyond agriculture.
I think Han wants to say something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yes.
it's amazing. I heard what you sharing about what you have done, and I totally agree with Phong, right?
Yes.
About the model. And actually, we can use like a general word like mapping. Because
Yeah.
I've been working with the model all the time, so
Yeah.
We have a
very
volunteer
when we
mapping.
look at the map or the model, we see the connection and all the dots where we are and
Yeah.
the others people on what they're doing, and what we heard from Cultivating, we already have the connection, the ideas and the networks, and
Right.
we just need to put in a platform.
Right.
And actually what we are doing with what I'm doing, I'm trying to I'm a co-founder of we set up a website called CVD, Conversations on Vietnam Development. So we aim to create a virtual think tank. So because actually we are from not all are from Vietnam, or we are from around the world by Vietnam. So the platform can bring up your ideas or your projects, what you have done and what you want to do. And that's what actually we're doing. And not only that, we can bring up the discussion with young professionals and experts.
Yeah.
And what I have seen that we've been missing, and that's what I'm doing. And that's actually I can help. I can see the immediately outcome of this discussion can be a mapping.
Yeah.
That's you mentioned like the model.
Yeah, it could be
So-
many different kind of mapping as well. I mean, it could be asking a question about, okay, so how many
Right.
people have looked into agricultural issues relating to corn, you know, and technologies that, you know, Monsanto's or some companies are investing in Vietnam. And very quickly, you can print out a map, or you can take out a surface of that model that's hosted in UC Davis, but also have connections with many other models that other people have, other platforms. And then voila, you have this resource. I mean, it was not very different than the concepts of LinkedIn and other
Right,
things.
right.
But the concept here is to make it richer and richer in Vietnam, to do some good.
Right.
Not for people to, you know, exploit that, but to collaborate, because I think the world is going in the directions, there's going to be a big business in terms of social science. Why? Because people are not getting along. People are killing each other.
Projects
And
aren't working.
there are so
Why?
so many things that the world had created, but not maximizing the benefit of using them. So having a connection like that is going to maximize everything, and it can translate into funding,
Right.
translate into people wanting to use the system and outside of the group but wanting to use system but willing to pay a nominal fee, and then you can use a fee to do some other good things. I mean, for example, if many veterans American who fought in the Vietnam War really want to contribute something to the effort that we're doing right now in terms of planting trees. Our trees grow 50 feet in 3 years, and if you cut it, it'll grow another tree in 50 feet in another 3 years. So, I mean, maybe one veteran would like to sponsor a tree like that for the locals to have more job, because a tree is going to generate $2,000 when we cut that into boards and sell it on the market. So it's sort of like really a lot of things that can be extracted from the system and for different purposes, but they have to be good purposes.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of general tenet. I would not put my time or effort or enlist my network if it wasn't for the betterment of the people and the country. I mean, that's at the end of the day. I think most everyone here, I know for a fact, feel that way, and so that's the focus.
Can I ask you a question, Keeling? I was interested in the kind of, you were talking about the memorandum of agreement that you did with between Sacramento and Ho Chi Minh City, and the role that UC Davis played in that. And I was, recently there was, I worked in California, and I know many people especially in the second generation Vietnamese diaspora community members that really do want to engage in Vietnam and are engaging in Vietnam, and yet often have to do so kind of under the radar.
Yeah.
And recently there was Riverside Kenta relationship that sparked a huge protest.
Yes.
I wonder if there was something more that UC Riverside or UC Irvine could have done in that case to kind of to facilitate that conversation. And I was just curious to hear more about the details of what UC Davis did to be able to make that smooth.
Well, I think the problem is we experienced it too, so I think maybe there was a miscommunication there, but I was brought into conversation with Sacramento and Ho Chi Minh City because they wanted to establish a sister city relationship, and it was widely supported by the government in Sacramento and in Vietnam, but there was the community component of it. So that's where Davis was brought in, because we were that neutral ground, you see. So then the signing of the preliminary sister city agreement was signed in Davis. Why? Because there was a protest in Sacramento, you see.
Okay.
And so I was in quite hot water, but the reason why I was okay, like my house didn't get burned down, was because the head of the most conservative groups have my personal number. So all they had to do was call me and say, Keeling, we heard this happened. Are you responsible for this? And I said, I am a professor at UC Davis. My administration wants relationship with Vietnam. I'm here to facilitate these relationships as they happen. Yes, it was signed in Davis. Do you want the memorandum? Do you want this information? That they said, send it all to us. Thank you. Have a nice day. Because so then it wasn't like Keeling, you are on our shit list. It was like, okay, Keeling, you naughty girl, but okay, just send us what you have, because at least I was transparent. And so no, we didn't get away with it either, Ivan, if you will. But in terms of protests happened. But I'm in communication with the protesters. I'm in communication with, the government officials, and so it's, and also the sister city is now kind of put on hold a little bit because after, Sacramento is not used to protests of that nature, So of course that that was a very, I think, successful protest on the part of the certain aspects of the community to sort of stall that. But underneath, as you mentioned, even as there is the stalling of, relations that way, a delegation with the leadership from Sacramento, Vietnamese American leadership, and the leadership in Davis went to Ho Chi Minh City just months after that. So we had one of the biggest delegations we ever had. Then simultaneously, just maybe before that, we had a meeting with the ambassador and again the leadership of Sacramento
See,
and
UC
Davis.
That's how good change feels like. It would be pressure and then betterment and pressure and betterment.
So what happens is when people know, in the past there's only you succumb to the terrorist sort of activities, or or you stay out of it out of frustration, or you do it in complete secrecy and hope not to sort of be outed, right? But now there is this in between where, okay, there's a space where it's neutral, and that's Davis, where we provide the space, we provide the connections. If you ask for it, that's what we offer, and it's safe, if you will, safe zone.
That's very good.
Yes. Yeah, and in part it's because you and I, we have similar ethnic racial background, so we can coming from mixed heritage, it's a little bit more slippery than if we look like Vance over here,
Or
or Dr. Hoy, or Leslie, where they're
Or Andrew. No.
Yeah. Andrew should start saying he's mixed race. I think he can get away with it.
Well, I am actually.
What?
Yeah, so I'm half Mexican and
No, that's the
Perfect.
handsomeness, right? That's the handsome. Anyway, we're just being biased. I'm sorry to take it this way.
So-
Mixed people are so vain.
So when I make comments about it being necessary to preserve elements of your culture, I speak from experience. I learned English
Right.
and Spanish at the same time.
So I'm not going to give you such credit because in the future, because I've been saying you are incredibly in touch white man, like you absolutely know, but you're not 100%.
Well, we have white people in Mexico too.
Well, yes, and you pass big time. Anyway, this is where the race and ethnicity come into play in the little. But
Yeah.
we let's say we all we need to utilize every bit of those things that we need to do for these types of projects and to move things along. So I'm always in need of advice on how to do these things. It honestly, it's very time consuming to talk to this group for 3 hours, talk to another group for 3 hours, just to explain all sides, and then they want you to start talking to more groups and more groups that come talk to the ministry, come talk to the community. It's like, oh my God, exhausting. And so
But that's how you get the big picture.
that, I put in the time, and then but now we're here, we're here now, and I think this is where things are starting to move in honestly, it's still really nascent. What we're trying to do here is nascent in a sense that, it needs sustainable support to then support these other projects and people. But I think when the buy-ins happen, and this is why they're cluster meetings, we're looking for the buy-ins, not like financially, but, you're in it for the projects, we're moving it forward, let's make it happen. Because if I say, this is worth it, everyone's interested, and I'm the only one saying it, doesn't look so good, right? So.
And I think Vance raised a great point about finding ways to raise awareness
Right.
across the different areas of focus that we have related to Vietnam.
Right.
Sometimes I think we're too deep into our own disciplines or
Right.
domains without realizing how it could potentially tie into somebody else's research or somebody else's
Absolutely.
interest, either here or in another part of the world,
Right.
or directly in Vietnam. So
Yeah.
I think there's real value in creating a network and in finding ways to have people exposed to
Right.
these other projects that are going on concurrently and finding points of collaboration among them.
Yeah.
I think the sort of, it has not happened because in part of the fear of political repercussions on both sides, A, and B, people being very tight with the kind of work that they're doing or secretive with the kind of work that they're doing. And I think if we come from a place of more openness and transparency and a sense of wanting to help, then there might be a change in the culture. Because I think we're dealing with a culture that's been existing for so long, and we live under that. And so, that needs to be changed.
And if I may, just build on your point, a lot of time it's not like a switch on and off. I mean, there are many different layers in between. Somebody may develop a really secretive technology that's business confidential information. But then there are many other layers of information coming toward that can be shared. And they may be shared for the goodness of their heart. They might be sharing for the goodness of making collaboration that benefit them financially eventually.
Right.
So there's many things, many
Absolutely.
layers that we can explore. And so human conversations, like one-on-one or one to a group tend to be a very linear relationship. But if you have a system
it can be multi-layered relationship, can cut across different things. And I just really think that it was something that if working, and you might want to focus on some area first, you know, using that as pilot and studies,
Right, right.
and funding from people who want to use that service, contributing to that, can begin flowing into the system.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about, say, environment, you know,
Yeah.
you're in new, you know, kind of industry and it's not industry, sorry, entrepreneurship, etc. You know, they're in, and so,
Yeah.
you know, the studies is in, students, I mean, it's like an in, you know, like already right there, and I see that with so many other
Yeah.
projects.
And the risk of talking too much, right, really trying to drive the point home. I was talking with Leslie earlier on the way from the parking structure back here, and she was talking about a friend of hers or a relative having a business selling charcoal in Vietnam. And Vietnam have huge number of coconut trees, man. I mean, if anything we have is coconut trees. And coconuts can generate charcoal. But charcoal is not only using for barbecue. Granulated, activated carbon matrices can be used in indoor air quality, helping the children with their health. I mean, because in Saigon, if you open your window, I mean, all of the unburned gasoline gets in there. It can be used in hospital. It can be used in a lot of industries where pure air is needed. So by the connection, you know, I mean, not only we turn a person who make charcoals into millionaire, but aside, we're making the profit of having more people using it and having a way to advertise it, not on, you know, TV or whatever advertising, but in this very intelligent way, going from the usage of it, the benefits of it, who are using it, what are the issues relating to it, all this intelligence are all connected together on that subject.
I think our first conference needs to address this, because how we direct the sort of the good investment and good development is through defining what Vietnam development should look like. So that's why I think that conference that we're proposing is instrumental in that, and yes, please be involved centrally with that, because in that way then it becomes clear this is the trajectory of Vietnam. Like, we want to do like that. Like, we have coconuts, that's us. We don't have to export it, we don't have to, you know, it's there, and then we, through innovation, think of other ways to create business, to do business with this thing, right? I mean, that's, to me, is a prime example of where I see, or where I would hope all our skills coming together and sharing that knowledge in a venue like, say, a conference in Da Nang would and why Da Nang and why Vietnam too, because then we're inviting in individuals that are in decision-making positions to say that makes sense to us.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth.
We're like simpatico.
Through Dr. Hoi and the university system, because Vietnamese universities are mostly governmental supported.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we, you know, if the symposium can be that this is a forum to work together on new ideas, and look, we've got several new ideas to demonstrate,
Right.
and then let the government be part of it to say, okay, this is
What it looks like.
how we see with you,
Yeah.
this is where the trajectory could be,
Right.
you know, and for them to exercise their leadership and buy in.
Yes.
You know, and then other Vietnamese living overseas and say, see what they can do. It's not about politics, it's about making Vietnam better.
And that was a conversation
Yeah.
yesterday. We had a businessman who's also the president of the Vietnamese Association in Sacramento, which was nice to have him there, yeah? He's supposed to be here, goddammit. But anyway, he would actually benefit from this and hear this, because exactly what you're saying, one of the things he's saying is, what do I tell my community when all they see is 1990s Vietnam corrupt? You know, and how do we get them to say, yeah, Vietnam's not perfect, but here's where we're working to make it better, you know? And I think where I come in is to paint that nice picture of Vietnam will look like this to the rest of the world, and Vietnam will look like this to the Vietnamese. You know, this is the image, this is the idea, this is the marketing, this is the nation branding that we can do. And here's the practical sort of instruments that are taking place. So it's a whole picture, because the way I understand it is, and this is not just with the Vietnamese government, but everybody, they want to see they want to see what that possibility could look like. You know what I mean? They want to see it practically with sort of the businesses that are already in place, and you have that, background there, but also the sort of the new projects that both of you are sort of seeing and working on. You know what I mean? So this is where the synergy is happening. Like that's what I'm thinking, and I think it will work.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. If you're going to be directing and guiding investment and development in Vietnam, it needs to be supported by a vision.
Right.
What Vietnam is to become, or will become. And I think Da Nang is a natural, neutral space, even within Vietnam, for folks from Hanoi.
In more than one dimension.
For folks from Hanoi and Saigon to converge on as well. So it really seems like the stars are aligned.
And you can still buy a very nice house.
there.
Yeah, it's, I mean,
and you and I will be living there. You need to take a little trip another little trip to Da Nang, it seems like in the spring of 2018.
Yeah, well, I've been kind of expanding my research to Da Nang, and I find it one of the most places. The technology hub, it's building a huge infrastructure, expanding rapidly. So this is great. I mean, Da Nang seems it's quite open to new research.
Oh yeah.
It's interested in attracting technology and development. We've got some forward-thinking academics and leaders, and I think being able to do a workshop there or a conference there where all the right people are in the same room is what will help to kind of turn an idea into a feasible project where all the right collaborators on the ground. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah, let's keep that.
About 5 minutes. I'm just.
Okay, so would before you take off, would you be interested in being part of the planning as well?
Yeah. We're gonna
Sure. And Da Nang in 2018 is when you were thinking of.
April 2018.
What?
April 2018. April 2018.
Yeah, that springtime over there is beautiful.
Yeah.
And we should seriously consider to have that intercontinental hotel.
Or at least the VIPs there.
Where you can take a cable car from the top of the mountain down to the beach.
Oh, stop it, fancy pants. I'm gonna call you fancy pants from now on.
Da Nang is fantastic. I mean, there's here on the East Coast, connected with Yale University and Columbia University, and they've also been trying to expand into Vietnam. They don't have the same kind of diaspora engagement aspect that you're doing here at UC Davis, Keelan, but there was a Tran Duc Son from Da Nang Institute for Economic Development was here as a Fulbright Fellow at Yale last year.
Oh.
And so, he seems like somebody who is also interested in making these kinds of connections and collaborations.
Okay.
So, every time I go to Da Nang, I hear about all these people that are kind of interested in creating more international collaborations and connections. They don't necessarily always connect with each other, and I think being able to get all these voices in the same room would be fantastic.
We'll do that email and then so that you can send along that information to us as well. That would be fabulous. And I'd love to hear more, maybe in a separate conversation or in a group conversation of the work you're doing. I'm glad we're getting in touch and our works are so much aligned. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'd be interested as well. I'm currently visiting from New York, and I'm from New York, and you're absolutely right. The diaspora engagement is completely different on the East Coast compared to the West Coast.
No, but there's an interest. I've been hearing from NYU that they're looking to expand to Vietnam too, and bringing in scholars. So even NYU is starting to have a buzz about Vietnam too. So I think people are recognizing that this is, like you were saying, that the next millionaires in Vietnam, they don't know that they're these individuals, right? They're still to be made.
Yeah, they don't know the potential, I think, or haven't found ways to realize it.
But so we will help them understand these potentials and present it in a neat package, because that's where the social science and humanities come in, right? Put it in a nice little bow, and so it would make sense to them.
Similarly, though, I think when you were discussing about the shift from having an East Asian Studies department to East and Southeast Asian,
they know it.
At Columbia University, they have the Weatherstead East Asian Institute, but they still package Southeast Asia. There's a Professor Lin Hang Win who's based out of that institute, but I think most of her research is focused on 20th century Vietnam,
Oh,
historically.
yeah, she's writing that Vietnam War encyclopedia, I think, right? Is that Lynn?
She's written a few books.
Yeah, and she wrote that book on Hanoi and Lay's, what was her name? Anyway, yeah, I'm familiar.
Hanoi's War.
Hanoi's War, there you go.
That's the
right.
one.
Yeah,
But
yeah, exactly.
I don't think there are as many.
Listed, so.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I don't think there are as many opportunities to engage with the diaspora or overseas students on the East Coast, or it's not as visible. I can think of maybe the Asia Society in New York, and the New York Southeast Asian Institute as well, but there's certainly not as much.
We can look at that, you know, I'm happy to come over and shake things up.
The model though is, I mean, because California has such a significant diaspora
It does,
population,
it
you
does.
often have kind of Asian studies and Asian American studies not speaking much to each other, and yet they're
Right.
often doing similar
Yeah.
things. On the East Coast, you have, UConn, there's an Asian and Asian American Studies Institute, and
Right.
so they've got all the same people and the same.
Oh, that's
all
funny.
Asian studies scholars and Asian American studies scholars in the same place, speaking to each other, collaborating,
Mm.
and oftentimes that catalyzes awareness of linkages that might otherwise go unnoticed.
Well, as you know, a lot of these institutes aren't made of a ton of scholars. So like here, for example, Catherine Burnett at least has that vision. She's the director of the Tea Institute, amazing. And she has the vision at least to say, hey, maybe Southeast Asia would be of interest because tea is all over Southeast Asia. And so, when you think of tea, your world just kind of opens up, like, from the Middle East to, London to, everywhere, right? And so it's her vision to, and sort of lack of ego to say it doesn't need to be East Asian, it should be East and Southeast, and having the vision say the demographics is also Southeast, the growing demographics is also Southeast in many ways, right? So why not include them as well? And so, but that's because her, and then approaching me, and then, tying this all together so it's seamless, that's worked here. But I don't know if it worked in other places if individuals aren't open to those kind of dialogue. Like, I'm area studies in many ways. So if area studies approaches me, and I feel comfortable in area studies, that makes, it's no problem. And you and I do diaspora and transnational work, so that's not a problem. But others may just be, doing Asian American studies and then area studies, and they don't make those connections. But that's not us, and that's not what we're doing here. We're absolutely creating and sort of continuing to utilize the transnational connections, right? So that's what we need to do to continue. And as far as bringing the diaspora, I know Boston is. I stayed in Boston in my postdoc, and there's a vibrant diaspora community there, and even though they have really strong views from, say the war, they are also some of the biggest movers and shakers of humanitarian projects in Vietnam, for example, right? Or some of the biggest movers and shakers of technologies that have been transferred over time. You have MIT there, for example, and they've been very active with what goes on in Vietnam technologically over the years. And so things like that is nuance our community, right? It's not one way. And so we tap into that, like Vance and I are Vietnamese Americans, and here we are sitting at this table. So, we're, it's cross-section, it's always even. So, it's like, Anyway, point being, lots of
conference
movement.
in Manasol next month on Southeast Asians and the diaspora, so if any of you are there.
Oh,
might be
right,
an opportunity
is that the
for
Boston
connection,
one?
so,
That's the Boston?
UMass Lowell.
UMass, yes, Lowell,
Boston.
right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, I'll think about it.
When will you be that?
I have to jump onto another
Can you,
conference call now, but,
yeah, so, I mean, can you forward that, Southeast Asian one, so that I don't have to look through my files, that conference? Can you forward that to me, and then I'll forward it to the group?
Yeah,
Because,
sure.
Mr. Hoyt is gonna be going to the East Coast within the month, so he might be able to make that, meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be great, and, if any of you are coming to the East Coast, I'm close to Boston and New York, so it'd be great to meet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's Andrew and Mr. Hoyt.
I'm giving a talk on Vietnam startups on June 1st at NYU, actually, so if you're
okay.
gonna be around, please join.
I'll come down for that, June 1st, I'll be around for that.
Super.
We can meet in person.
Yep, look forward to meeting you.
And then, Mr. Hoyt's also gonna be in New York City, right?
Yes.
So, make sure that,
Can-
you can cross.
How can New York City?
I will,
Yes.
I will send them your email.
Yeah.
Professor
Okay.
Small.
Right.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you have a
Have a
good,
good conversation.
thank you,
Thank you.
thank you very much for your time.